So let's bring in Sophia Kai, White House reporter for Politico, Jeff Mason, White House correspondent for Reuters, and Lauren Hirsch, New York Times reporter covering business and policy. Welcome all. Jeff, before I get to tariff talk, what are you hearing about the government shutdown next week? Will it be averted?
Well, I think they want to avert it. I think this White House is well aware that usually government shutdowns politically end up hurting the incumbent or the person who's in the White House more than the opposition party, so more than Democrats in this case. That said, there are no guarantees in Washington, and there's no guarantee that that's going to happen. And the president showed in his first term a remarkable willingness to shut the government down, even when it ended up hurting him politically. So TBD, Alex, but I think we want to avoid it, and I think the lawmakers on the Hill want to avoid it as well.
So, Jeff, is it clear what forces are at work when the president one day imposes tariffs, then lifts them, then threatens higher tariffs? And what do you make of Howard Lutnick's tone? He seems like a cheerleader, but is he providing a realistic picture?
Well, let me answer your first question first. What forces are at work? It's the forces inside President Trump's brain. And I'm not being facetious there. He goes back and forth. He has a phone call with the Mexican leader and then decides to be more gracious about it with her and her country. He hears from car makers and then decides to give them a reprieve for a month. And yet that was the same dynamic at the beginning of this process when he gave a 30-day reprieve for all of the tariffs on Mexico and Canada. And then, of course, as you just discussed, they went into effect this week. Or last week, rather. So, he goes back and forth based on the advice or the conversation that he has had most recently, and then makes those decisions. As far as Commerce Secretary Lutnick, I mean, he's a fan of tariffs, too, because he works for Donald Trump. And their logic and the logic that he was articulating refers specifically to the reciprocal tariffs, which are supposed to come into effect in April. And the logic that he was explaining there is if we show the rest of the world that we're just going to match your tariffs, whatever tariffs you already have on the United States, then that's going to drive those countries to change theirs. That logic is perhaps a little bit more logical than some of the other tariffs that President Trump has been discussing. That doesn't mean it's going to work the way he wants it to, but that's what they foresee, or that's at least what they want to see happen.
So, Lauren, the Wall Street Journal apparently not buying what's being sold here because the editorial board called for someone to sue President Trump, challenging his right to impose tariffs without congressional approval. Is there a sense these tariff moves will erode Trump's support from Wall Street and from big businesses because they will damage the economy overall?
It's a great question. Donald Trump cares a lot about what Wall Street thinks, what the stock market thinks. And what we've seen so far is the market has reacted very poorly to the threat of these tariffs. And beyond that, they've been unable to make any kind of decision. They haven't done deals. They haven't made investments. There is so much uncertainty about what tomorrow brings, what the next hour brings, that it's really tempered down on CEO confidence. And there is this big question as to at what point does that really restrain Trump's relatively volatile approach to tariffs.
And Sophia, part of the economic story is the ongoing job cuts by Elon Musk. And your colleagues at Politico, they followed up on a New York Times report on a clash between Elon Musk and Marco Rubio. And here's what the president said about it when asked.
No clash. I was there. You're just a troublemaker. And you're not supposed to be asking that question because we're talking about the World Cup. Elon gets along great with Marco, and they're both doing a fantastic job. There is no clash.
Is there any sense Musk could start getting pushed out of the picture, or is he here to stay?
I think that he's really here to stay because what he brings to the table is not just, in his words, technical support. It's the hundreds of millions of dollars that he could spend in the next midterms. That's a tool that they can use to wrangle lawmakers on the Hill. And Musk also brings with him an immense amount of social media influence. And I think that's something that Trump's cabinet acknowledges. And again, so Trump doesn't mind chaos. He's someone that, acknowledges that Musk has has a mission that he wants to do, which is to cut the federal government. And he also knows that Musk cannot run the agency, so he has to keep the cabinet happy, which is why you saw President Trump come in to defend Marco Rubio and say, look, the secretary is doing a great job.
Hang on, Sophia. It sounds a little bit crazy because what you're implying is that the money that comes with Elon Musk can be used to primary Republicans who oppose the position of this president. I mean, the intra-party, that's just crazy.
Yeah, and this is really unprecedented. I was just talking to somebody who works for America PAC, which is Musk's, the primary vehicle that he can really weigh in on some of these elections. And I asked them, look, like how much money is left in this PAC? And what I was told was it really doesn't matter because at any given time, Elon can just contribute to it and top it off.
What is your reaction to that, Jeff?
Well, I mean, I enjoyed hearing you say, "Isn't that crazy?" I mean, is crazy to whom? You know, it's not crazy to Elon Musk. It's not crazy to Donald Trump. This is a reality. One of his top advisors is the richest man in the world. Is the richest man in the world, and who had a huge influence in terms of his financial support in the last election. And look, we've also seen, and not only seen, but we've heard the president talk openly about retribution, and that attitude applies not just to the opposition in terms of Democrats, it applies to people on his team, i.e. other Republicans who may oppose him. So the fact that that is a threat that's hanging over them, the financial piece, but also just the possibility of getting primaried, that is absolutely real in Congress right now. And I think it's no doubt one of the reasons that you haven't seen a lot of Republicans who may be leery certainly about Elon Musk and Doge, but also about some of the things that the president is doing, not stepping up to take those public positions.
I guess I use the term crazy because we are in such unprecedented, uncharted waters with this. It's stunning, and any number of other words you can use. I do want to ask you, Lauren, about an important article that you did on the Department of Justice investigating the price of eggs. What's that about?
It's very early stage. You know, we've all seen it when we've gone to the grocery market, the price of eggs has skyrocketed. And the biggest question that exists in these kinds of situations is, are the price of eggs up because of supply chain disruptions? There has been the avian flu, which has, ravaged the industry, or is it because of collusion? And that is what the Justice Department wants to find out. It's very early stage, but they're preparing to send out effectively subpoenas for a civil investigation to learn a little bit more about the extent to which these companies have been information sharing and the extent to which, if they have, they've been using that to impact pricing.
So this investigation, Jeff, interpretation of it, do you think it's more about real potential price gouging, or is it for political appearances to make it look like the administration is trying to tackle the price of eggs and inflation, by extension?
I think it may be a little bit of both, and I don't think that those things are mutually exclusive. You saw some of that during the Biden years as well, threatened or investigations, or at least acts to look into what they consider price gouging driving inflation. Right now, it's specifically on eggs. Eggs are such a good manifestation, I guess, of high prices when you're just looking for an easy example. And Americans are facing this in the grocery store every day. So I think that the Trump administration is under pressure to show that they're doing something about it. So the political piece to this that you're referring to, or that you're asking about, Alex, is real. They need to demonstrate that they're doing something. Will they find that there's price gouging? I don't know. It's hard to say. But is that a way to demonstrate that they're taking action? Absolutely. And is that necessary politically? Absolutely, again.
So is the expectation, Lauren, given the reporting that you've done with your team there, will it really help lower the cost of eggs, having this investigation?
Antitrust investigations obviously take a long time, but to Jeff's point, it's sending a message. And also to Jeff's point, it's certainly something that former President Biden's administration did too. When they see prices skyrocket, they're at the very least saying, we're watching your behavior. And I'm sure that CEOs, have also taken notice.
Sophia, I want to get to the Ukraine-Russia war with you because there's a new NBC News report saying that Donald Trump now wants more than just a mineral deal. He also wants Ukraine to make other concessions for the U.S. to then resume their intel sharing and the military weapons flow. What's your read on that?
Look, I think ultimately President Trump is interested in a deal. That's always been his priority. I think he also wants to see one of his biggest legacies as a person who brings peace. And that's why that he's been so insistent that Ukraine, bring more to the table in the form of being willing to potentially give up some land or in some way showing that they're more serious about peace. And so that's why, we hear U.S. officials today saying that it's not enough for us to be in the same place, last Friday, where Ukraine and U.S. was ready to sign the minerals deal. We're hearing from Trump and his team that they want to see more. And I think they're saying they've seen Ukraine come into a more positive direction and they just want to see a little bit more.
Okay. Sophia Kai and Jeff Mason and Lauren Hirsch, thank you all three.